Hello, I'm Flora, speaking out. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your thoughts and your comments. Were you ever in a clique in your high school? I'm thinking back to the tight little groups. Do they still have them in high schools? I think so. For example, there was the sports group, and then there were the leaders, movers and shakers, always running for offices. Then there were the nerds. I was certainly a nerd. They're the ones who are deeply involved in scientific projects, literary productions, discussion groups. Then, of course, there were the art groups, music, drama, and the loners, who didn't fit into any of those categories. Um, some of these groups overlapped, but you had to be a bit careful about that. If a nerd, for example, tried to get in with the movers and shakers, they'd be pretty well trumped underfoot. If a sports leader figure tried to get in with the nerds, they wouldn't trample him, but there'd be some raised eyebrows and people sort of whispering behind their hands, what's he doing here? And then, of course, the school teams. You had to decide when you entered the school whether you were a purple or a gold. Now, all my family, my siblings, my close friends were all purple, of course. There was something a little bit odd about being a gold. Yeah, they weren't bad people, they were human, but something a little off about being a member of the gold team. You'd think a while before you'd date him or hang out with him. Anyway, then you go to school reunions years later, and what a shock. People out of their categories, people out of their boxes. They look different, they talk differently, they act differently. They aren't what you remember, not in their proper box anymore. This can be very disconcerting because we love to categorize both ourselves and other people, which is fairly harmless unless it threatens others, makes them afraid, unless it makes them feel out of control, that you're not the way they used to be. Yeah, you can even lose friendships because someone you have safely categorized no longer fits in there. There's, any kind of radical change threatens a lot of people, scares them, makes them angry, even if it's a better change rather than a worse change, for it means the foundations are shaking and the glass ceilings are smashing, and you get into a kind of earthquake mentality. Everything, including those other people, are out of control now. And you may be wondering why I'm thinking along these lines right now, because I think millions of our nation have been in a state of post-traumatic stress disorder for decades. I'm beginning to think that Trump is a symptom, not a primary cause. I'm beginning to think that, I don't mean right now those who voted him who always vote the same ticket all the way through. I'm speaking of the millions who flattened themselves before him. This man of no political experience, brutish, without honor, compassion, a symptom of some deep malaise in our nation. I think most dictators build on a deep malaise in the nation, some overwhelming conflict, some sense of great loss, a feeling of being threatened, a feeling of being angry. I think, if I'm right, this trauma in our nation really began about 50 years ago. That began the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, a vast, enormous cultural shifts, breakthroughs. There was the drive for the civil rights. There were the protests of the Vietnam War, which for a while felt like it was shaking the country to pieces. The violence of the revolts. There was AIDS, of course. Now we're finding women in leadership. Remember, some of you are old enough, those parties of burning of your bras? That was a big fashion for a while there. Big protests. Now we're getting Black people in leadership. Now gays and lesbians out of their boxes. Legal marriage for them at last. And then, of course, the total shock of 9/11. Some people have compared that experience right out of a beautiful blue morning, like suddenly being raped. Arabs, our fear and terror of Arabs. Then came a severe financial recession. Obama was elected president. A Black man president. Too much change. World turned upside down. Mores, categories, traditions, expectations, standards, crashing and burning. And people became frightened, threatened, and above all, angry. A prolonged shock. It is significant that early in the Obama administration, the Tea Party began to rise to power in Congress. Also, groups like the Heritage Foundation go back to the good old conservative safe days when everybody knew their proper place. And then building on this feeling of earthquakes, threats, anger, comes along a larger than life in your face, blonde, white, Anglo-Saxon man. Depend on me. I will fix all these problems. I'm on your side. I know why you're angry. I will make you great again. You see, with dictators, the ground is already prepared. They are symptoms. Okay, back in your boxes, everyone. Let's ban Muslims. You remember that was one of his first acts in his first administration. Let's throw out as many immigrants as we can. Now at last we can look down on others again and get things in control. We can show our power to other nations. Who do they think they are anyway? We can quell those uppity universities and intellectuals. We can dominate. We can allow into our nation, under the refugee program, only 7,500 this year. All of them white Afrikaners. Or, as Hegseth lectured, that big group of generals and admirals, yeah, you don't have to bother anymore about diversity or inclusion. We're past all that now, along with his insulting, ignorant remarks about women in the military. Crawl back to your proper holes. Get back in your boxes. Well, how do we meet this? I think first to understand that this ground has been prepared for a long, long time, that people are building on fear, the sense of threat, the sense of loss, the sense of control, the sense of power. We're not alone, we who are beginning to realize this. I don't know if you've looked up that wonderful group called Indivisible. I strongly advise it. Their motto is, don't agonize, organize. Together, to try to understand what's going in our nation, to try to heal these deep cracks of confidence. What's your favorite fairy story? They are, every one of them almost, revolutionary. It's amazing. They aren't banned along with the Odyssey I was speaking about Homer 2 sessions ago when I was sharing thoughts with you. These fairy stories, every one of them almost includes a tremendous transformation, transition, someone getting out of their former place. You know, you're working, sweeping in the kitchen, getting covered with ashes and cinders, and then you discover you're beautiful. Or you've been asleep for a long, long time, and you wake up. Or you've been frozen for a long, long time, and someone brings you back to human flesh. Or you've been a beast for a long, long time, and suddenly you begin to know you're a prince. Now, of course, you might point out it's a reverse too sometimes. These fairy stories are very realistic and grim. You can begin by being the prince you are and find yourself rapidly becoming a beast, or frozen, or asleep. And that happens, we begin to lose our full humanity when we are transformed into the kind of person who says, your change, your new freedom is threatening me, and I've got to do something about it to control you. We are, the fairy stories say it, the great historical sagas say it, like the Odyssey. Never let anybody, your family, your job, your church, your nation, stuff you back into your old boxes, which is so comfortable for them. Let's help one another climb out. Scripture, every book of the scriptures tells us of revolutionary changes in people, transformation, getting out of old, comfortable, safe categories, becoming a new creation, becoming fully human. Let's keep helping one another get out of our boxes and face the daylight. Thank you for being with me.